The Hadza of Tanzania average around 4 hours of work per day. 4 hours. And they weren't even trying to optimize it. No productivity app, no Pomodoro timer, no deep work block on a color-coded calendar. They just stopped when they were done. And apparently, that was enough. The Hadza are one of the last true foraging societies on Earth, living more or less the way humans lived for 95% of our species' existence. Researchers study them partly because what they do with their time is the closest thing we have to a baseline, a default setting for the human day before civilization started adding features nobody asked for. Meanwhile, you have a second monitor specifically so you can be inefficient across a larger surface area. Most people, when they picture prehistoric life, see something relentless. Wake up, hunt mammoth, run from predator, sleep, repeat. A life defined entirely by survival, with no room for anything else. That picture isn't just incomplete, it's almost exactly wrong. And the way it's wrong is the whole story. Start with the morning because it didn't start the way yours does. No alarm, no agenda. Mornings in foraging societies, based on anthropological observation, were genuinely slow. People waking gradually, tending fires, talking, nursing children, doing small repairs, not rushing toward anything. The shape of the day was determined by light, temperature, season, and whatever the group collectively decided made sense. There was no workday with a clear start and end. Tasks happened when they needed to, distributed fluidly across the group. Work and rest weren't separated. They were woven together in a way that made the boundary meaningless. We looked at the system, decided it needed improvement, and replaced it with a 6:47 a.m. notification from an app that plays whale sounds, while also reminding you about your 9 a.m. stand-up. Progress is not always linear. When foraging did happen, it rarely looked like a lone hunter stalking prey through a forest. For most of human prehistory, the diet was predominantly plant-based. Tubers, fruits, nuts, seeds, gathered more than hunted. Women in most foraging societies provided 60 to 80% of caloric intake through gathering. The dramatic hunt was real, but exceptional. A successful large game hunt might happen once every few weeks. The rest was slower, quieter work, done close to camp, done socially, almost never alone. This quietly dismantles the entire rugged individual surviving against nature mythology that a significant portion of modern culture is built on. The prehistoric human wasn't a lone wolf. They were deeply, structurally embedded in a group. Solitude wasn't a lifestyle. It was basically a death sentence. The part that keeps appearing in research and almost never makes it into the popular imagination. Prehistoric humans were extraordinarily social in their daily lives, in a way most modern people simply aren't. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent decades studying the Juhwanzi Bushmen of the Kalahari. The texture of the day wasn't primarily about tasks, it was about people, sitting together, watching children, grooming, telling stories about group members who weren't present, what researchers diplomatically call social information exchange, and what everyone else calls gossip. Here's the part evolutionary anthropologists love. Language itself may have evolved largely for this purpose. Robin Dunbar at Oxford has argued for decades that complex symbolic communication developed not to coordinate hunts, but to manage relationships in groups too large for physical grooming alone. The thing that separates us from every other animal, language, developed primarily so we could say, okay, but did you see what Og did at the river yesterday? Twitter or X is not a corruption of language. Twitter is finally returning to its original purpose. Make of that what you will. Children in foraging societies spent large portions of their day in what researchers call free play, unsupervised, mixed-age groups, doing things that look a lot like nothing in particular. No enrichment program, no developmental milestone tracker, no theme birthday party with a dietary restriction form. Just, here are some kids, here's some dirt, figure it out, and somehow they turned out fine enough to invent civilization, which we then used to schedule their play. Then there was making things. The oldest known art, ochre engravings at Blombos Cave in South Africa, dates to roughly 75,000 years ago. Shell beads used as personal ornaments appear around the same period. Flutes carved from bird bone and mammoth ivory found in Germany date to 40,000 years ago. None of it is necessary for survival. All of it requires time, skill, and a decision to spend effort on something that didn't feed anyone or keep anyone warm. Aesthetic impulse, the desire to make something beautiful, to decorate yourself, to produce sound purely for the experience of it, is not a modern luxury. It's ancient. It predates agriculture, cities, writing, and everything we associate with civilization by tens of thousands of years. They weren't waiting for enough stability to finally afford creativity. They just made the flute. Sleep is worth its own mention because prehistoric sleep looked nothing like ours. Historian Roger Kirch and sleep researcher Jerome Siegel documented through different methods that pre-industrial human sleep was segmented, not one consolidated block. 4 hours of sleep, then 1 to 2 hours awake in the middle of the night, then 4 more until dawn. The waking window was used for conversation, reflection, and in Siegel's studies of modern forager groups, simply lying quietly in the dark while others slept. The consolidated 8-hour block is a modern invention, probably shaped by artificial light, eliminating the natural darkness cue that triggered the first sleep, which means if you regularly wake at 2 a.m. and can't get back to sleep, you might not have insomnia. You might just have a Stone Age sleep schedule running on modern infrastructure. Your doctor will prescribe something for this. What prehistoric humans did in that middle window was mostly think, not productively, just the particular quality of consciousness that exists at 2 a.m. when the world is still, and nothing requires your attention. Researchers describe forager groups in this window as collective, relaxed, just present in the dark together. We have that now too. It's called a power outage, and people absolutely lose their minds. 40 minutes without Wi-Fi, and someone's filing an insurance claim. So, what did prehistoric humans do all day? They gathered food for a few hours. They talked and about people, about events, about nothing in particular. For most of the rest, they played or watched others play. They made things nobody needed, but everyone wanted. They performed rituals whose exact meaning is lost, but whose existence is not. They slept in 2 segments with a quiet window in the middle. They spent almost no time alone. Anthropologist Marshall Sahlins called forager societies the original affluent society in 1966, not because they had an abundance, but because their needs were modest enough to be reliably met, leaving substantial time for everything else. Not easy, not safe, not free from grief or violence, but structured around presence, relationship, and making things, with far less of the day consumed by obligation than most people in developed economies experience now. 95% of human history is spent doing 4 hours of work. The rest of the day is yours. Then agriculture happened, then the industry, then the gig economy, then the hustle culture podcast tells you that if you're not building something at 5 a.m., you're falling behind. Behind what? Behind who? Og didn't wake up early to grind. Og made a flute and took a nap. Og was fine.